All right, brewers, I'm about to tell you a hard truth that might ruffle some feathers. Most breweries don't actually sell beer, they sell wort, and that's a problem. Because as much as you focus on that perfect recipe, that's a plan for wort. It's not what your customer is paying their hard earned money for. They buy finished beer, and if you don't have a bulletproof process to get you from grain to glass, you're just failing your beer and you're failing your brand. What your customer is really buying isn't just a recipe, it's a promise, a trust bond. And if you crack that bond by letting inconsistency creep in, you're not just selling beer, you're selling disappointment. In this episode of Quality Focus Bro Brewers, we're going to break down the stuff that really matters in the brewery, the crucial steps that happen after the boil, after the whirlpool, and after you've made that gorgeous wort. These are the steps that determine whether you're delivering a consistent, professional, rock-solid beer, or if you're just rolling the dice every time you fill a keg or can. Let's get brewing. G'day brewers, my name is Hendo and I am Pro Brewer Coach from the Rockstar Brewer Academy. I help pro brewers all over the world brew amazing world-class beer that they're totally proud of. Hey, let's just for a second step outside the brewery bubble for some background. Have you ever stopped to think about why a can of Coke tastes exactly the same whether you crack it open in New York, New Delhi, or in New Norfolk? It's not magic, mate. It's a promise, meticulously engineered and delivered on a global scale. For over a century, Coca-Cola has built one of the most powerful brands in history, not just on a secret formula, but on an unshakable promise of consistency. That promise creates a trust bond with the consumer. When a customer grabs that red can, they have a deeply ingrained expectation of what they're about to get. That consistency builds familiarity, and that familiarity breeds an insane amount of trust. It's a relationship, and we have a perfect catastrophic example of what happens when you break that trust. And before I tell you, I just looked at the analytics and I just saw that only 38% of you are subscribed to this channel, so if you could double check and subscribe, that would really help the channel out. Cheers. So, here's where it went wrong for Coca-Cola. Back in 1985, Coca-Cola was feeling the heat from their sweeter rival Pepsi. So they did what a lot of brewers do. They looked at the data. They ran nearly 200,000 blind taste tests and the results were crystal clear. People liked a new, sweeter formula better. So they made the logical choice. They canned their original formula and they launched the infamous New Coke. The backlash was immediate and brutal. We're talking thousands of angry phone calls a day. Protest groups were forming. People were literally pouring perfectly good Coke down the drain in the streets. As one of their own executives admitted later, their research completely failed to measure the deep emotional connection people had to the original. It was never just about the taste, it was about the identity, the memory, and the reliability. They had shattered the trust bond. Within 3 months, they were forced to backtrack and bring back the original, rebranding it as Coca-Cola Classic. The lesson was devastatingly clear. When your entire empire is built on consistency, breaking that promise is an existential threat. The trust was in the brand, and it was more powerful than the reality of what was in the can. So what on earth does a fizzy drink fiasco from 40 years ago have to do with your brewery? Absolutely everything. Every single time a customer orders a pint of your flagship IPA or pulls a 4-pack from the bottle o fridge, they're cashing in on that exact same trust bond. They're buying a promise. They remember that banger of a pint they had last week and they're expecting to get the same experience again. If your IPA is a vibrant, aromatic 10 out of 10 one week and a dull, slightly oxidized 6 out of 10 the next, you haven't just made a dodgy batch, you've put a crack in that trust bond. You've created uncertainty, and the next time that customer is standing at the bar, they'll hesitate. They'll remember that inconsistency. Maybe they'll try a beer from that other brewery down the road, or the one they know that they can rely on. That's your trust bond bending, and that's poison for your brand. Which brings us to the core of so many problems I see when I'm coaching professional brewers. They're so hyper-focused on recipe design that they completely miss the point. They tweak the grain bill by 0.5%. They argue about dry hopping temperatures on Reddit forums. They obsess over the wort. But the wort is just the potential. It's the starting line. The real race, the one that decides the quality and consistency of your finished beer, happens long after the kettle is turned off. This is why I'm asking you, are you in the business of selling wort or are you in the business of selling beer? Because the two are very, very different things. Your job isn't just to make great wort, Your job is to deliver a predictable, reliable, finished beer that honours the promise you've made to your customer. And if you want to know what that promise really means and how you can apply it to your brewing today, be sure to check out my 5-step brewery quality checklist. Just comment the word checklist below or head to rockstarbrewer.com/checklist, link in the description below. So to deliver on that promise, we need to get two things straight that brewers confuse all the time: beer quality and beer value. Beer quality is how well the beer is made. It's about being technically sound, precise, and consistent. It's about being free from flaws and hitting your numbers every single time. It's objective and measurable, both in terms of fit for use and true to brand. But beer value, on the other hand, is how much a customer thinks the beer is worth. It's all about the story, the hype, the brand, and the emotional connection. It's subjective and it's emotional. But here's the thing, your brewery needs both, but they don't always come together. Let me give you a perfect example. Think about mass-produced macro lager. Now, for a craft beer drinker, this is very low value. You might call it bland, boring, and uninspired. But from a technical standpoint, that beer has insanely high quality. The breweries that make it have some of the most hardcore quality control programs on the planet. They have teams of well-paid scientists and millions of dollars in lab gear just to make sure that every single can tastes identical, no matter where or when you drink it. That process is so dialed in, it's a marvel. That boring macro lager might be one of the most technically perfect beers you've ever dismissed. Now, let's flip it around and talk about high value, low quality. What do you think that looks like? Think about that crazy hyped up small batch imperial stout that people line up for hours to buy. It has incredibly high value. The demand is through the roof. The story is awesome and the untapped check-ins are glowing. But what if the execution is sloppy? I've seen this personally. About 12 years ago, a brewery in Melbourne launched with much hype by brewing a 10% smoked imperial stout. Social media was absolutely popping off about this upcoming release, but in practice, it was a different story. Some bottles were gushers, some were flat, and a few were okay. The carbonation was all over the map from one bottle to the next. That beer, for all of its high value, was a low-quality product. The hype was there, but the trust was just as fragile. Hype is a short-term game. Quality and trust are what build a lasting legacy. The sweet spot for any professional brewery is high quality and high value. You want to brew beers that people get excited about, but that are also so consistent and technically sound that you protect that sacred trust bond with every single pint and every single can. So how do we do it? How do we stop being wort sellers and start being professional brewers? It all comes down to your process, and here's the 5 key critical steps. The first step is build your freeway, which is your standard operating procedures. Imagine trying to drive from New York to LA without a map, road signs, or even a marked road. It would be absolute chaos. You might get there, but you'd take a different route every time and probably end up in a ditch more than once. Brewing without standard operating procedures or SOPs is exactly that. You need to build the freeway for your beer. An SOP is just a written document that spells out every single step of a process, from how to properly clean a tank to the exact timing of your dry hop additions. It kills the guesswork. It's not about stifling creativity, it's about creating a reliable framework for creativity. When you have a documented process for everything, yeast handling, fermentation temperatures, carbonation, CIP cycles, you eliminate the variables. And when you eliminate the variables, you create consistency. This is the foundation of a professional operation, and it's non-negotiable. The second step is to calibrate your compass. Master your measurements. If SOPs are your freeway, your measurement tools are your compass and your speedometer. Making decisions without accurate data is like driving blind. And here's the kicker. Are your instruments lying to you? If you don't know, then you're just guessing. The most critical and most abused instrument in any brewery is the pH meter. A brewer who doesn't calibrate their pH meter every single day is completely flying blind. Period. End of discussion. You think you're hitting your mash pH, but an uncalibrated pH meter can be off by tenths of a point, and that's the difference between a great beer and a flabby one. You have to keep calibration logs. Document everything every day, and the same goes for your thermometers and your density meters. Are you taking at least daily gravity, temperature, and pH readings during fermentation? You should be. The data tells you a story. It tells you if a ferment is on track or if it's starting to go sideways. giving you a chance to fix it before you've ruined the batch. And the next step is define your destination, and that means creating a product specification. You cannot hit a target that you haven't clearly defined. It's not enough to say, I'm brewing my West Coast IPA. You need a detailed product specification for that beer. For every single brand you produce, you need one document that is the single source of truth for that beer. This goes way beyond the recipe, and it must include your raw materials documented by ratios and percentages, not kilograms, not pounds, or barrels, or litres. Removing your equipment and batch size from the recipe writing equation is a great tool to scale your recipes from pilot size to commercial size. Then you've got to document your process. Break down your production process into phases: fermentation, diacetyl rest, chill, ready to pack, and ready to release. Set go, no-go tests so you know what the beer is supposed to look like right the way through the production process so it doesn't skew off on a tangent. And finally, you've got to have a clear definition of quality. That's fit for use and true to brand. Fit for use is all the numbers that can be measured with an instrument. Think final gravity, beer pH, IBUs, colour, carbonation, alcohol, and haze. But even if you hit the numbers, if the beer happens to be a diacetyl bomb, then it's not a quality batch of beer. And that's where true to brand comes in. It's a written description of what your beer is supposed to look like, smell like, taste like, and feel like. Have you ever written something like that before you've mashed in with a new recipe? It's what the world's best brewers do. The product specification's definition of quality is your destination, and if it's not written down, it doesn't exist. And the next thing you got to do is train your crew, build a culture of quality. Your beautiful and well-written SOPs and product specifications are worthless if your team doesn't understand why they matter. Quality isn't just the brewer's job, it's everyone in the brewery's job. Everyone, from the seller hand cleaning kegs to the person pouring pints, needs to be a guardian of your brand. Train your team. Explain why hitting the final beer pH is so important. Show them how a tiny temperature change can wreck a flavour profile. When your team understands the why behind the what, they take ownership. I worked with a brewery in Victoria where a packaging assistant flagged an issue with can seam integrity that the head brewer had missed. That assistant saved thousands of dollars and protected the brand's reputation because they were trained to care. And the next step is you got to close the feedback loop, and that means continuous improvement. Quality isn't a target you hit once and you're done. It's a moving target. You need to be relentless. You need to create feedback loops. Our mantra at the Rockstar Brewer Academy is simple. My next batch will be my best. Not perfect, better. This means formal or even informal sensory analysis in your brewery. Taste every batch against that product specification. Is it true to brand? And if not, why not? It also means listening to your customers. Don't be one of those brewers who dismisses feedback. Treat the feedback as data. And it means using lab results and competition feedback as tools to get better. Continuous improvement means you're always hunting for those 1% gains so you never settle. Look, this journey from wort to world-class beer can feel overwhelming, and I get it, but it's the single most important thing you can do to build a brewery that lasts. If you're ready to start that journey, I've created a free video crash course called the Pro Brewer Quality Plan. It's a practical guide that walks you through the system that helps you to brew world-class beer, and you can check it out for free at rockstarbrewer.com/crash course, or you can get it from the link in the description below. Your perfect wort is the foundation, but the house you build on top of it is your process. The lesson from Coca-Cola is clear. The promise of a consistent experience is the bedrock of trust and brewery growth. That macro lager you look down on is a masterclass in quality control, and your goal is to build your technical prowess in brewing because at the end of the day, your beer is your brand. It's a promise. Let's make it a rock solid one. Hey, if you liked this episode, I reckon you should check out this one next. Thanks heaps for tuning into this episode of Quality Focused Pro Brewers. I'll catch you in the next one. Cheers.